just slightly damp when I throw it down. I feel like it sticks just a little bit better. If it's really sloppy wet, it's not going to stick. All right, so everything is pushing and pulling, and with the exception of like making the cone and maybe doing the volcano, I'm only going to work, because I'm right-handed, I'm only going to work between 3 and 6 on the cylinder. If I go over here or over here, I'm going to lose my control, because yeah, just the physics of it all. You want your arms pretty close to your body. All right, I'm going to try to mix in this slip here, like throwing the slip, not just putting with water. All right, so first thing I like to do is use a lot of pressure from my body, my center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wedge I'm first of all sitting as close as this as I can. If you're sitting way back here, you don't have control. You're going to be wrestling the clay. So I sit as close as I can. Elbow goes to my hip, and watch just as I lean into the clay. I'm not using any muscle. I'm just leaning into the clay. Okay, you can see what that just kind of shoved it right on the center. It's not actually what I'm going to be doing with that. So now what I'm doing is I am squishing the clay up into a cone. You can see that my hands are always relaxed. Okay? When you're first starting out, your hands are going to be really tense. So try to focus on just putting pressure where you need to put pressure on the clay. So I use this little bit right here, and then the back of my hand, or not the back of my hand, my hands on the back of the clay, but I'm using this part right at the base of my fingers to make that cone. Now I'm going to push it down into center. For this, I have this hand on this side of the clay again, so this would be one of those instances when it's actually on the other side of the clay, but I can't have it on this side of the clay, so I have a hand here. This hand's pushing down. I'm actually going to be using the side of my thumb right there. You don't want to open it up like that, because it'll just go squish out like a pasta maker. Okay, this is pushing down, this is pushing forward. All I have to do is put my elbow on my hip and lean into the clay, and the weight of my arms pushing the clay down, and the weight of my body is creating leverage under the clay. You can see my fingers are nice and relaxed. Just focus that pressure right where I need it. Okay, it's not quite centered yet. I usually clean up that clay around the bottom there, put a little bit more water on, and lean back into it. It's centered, and I relax from my shoulders down to my hands. Okay, and it's uncentered. I don't know how Stacy drops the hole when she does it, but I don't have any pressure on the outside of the clay. You don't need to sit there and go like this. If you do this with any larger piece of clay than 1 pound, you're going to give yourself muscle strains in here. So what I do is I use both hands, both on the inside, faces over the clay. This is another reason why you want to be as close as you can get to the wheel. So you can get your face over the clay. My wrist is low, my fingers are curled, okay, like that. I don't ever use my fingers flat like that. Okay, you don't have any pressure if your fingers are flat, because you can bend that finger back. If you curl your finger just a little bit, you're actually using all of these muscles here, and you can put a lot more pressure on the clay. So my left hand is here helping. I'm going to just push down and pull back just slightly. Okay, I'm going to drop it down.
Now where's your thumb on the right hand? Where's your thumb? Is your thumb sticking out?
It's just, it's on the clay. It's just there.
Okay.
It's not really doing anything. I'm just putting pressure on that.
Sometimes, you know, my thumb drops down along the base, and then, you know,
and kind of squishes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, that's one of those things. You want to try to focus the pressure where you want it, and keep everything else pretty relaxed, or get it out of the way.
Okay, that's why I asked where that thumb was.
Yes, so you can see that I have all of my fingers in there. These ones are just kind of out of the way. This is the one that's really... Okay. I'm not going to... Like, I like to keep the clay well lubricated with...
A lot of water.
Well, I'm not using a lot of water. I'm using enough water. Okay.
I think I probably do it too dry, so okay.
Yeah, if you feel it getting sticky, then
you need more water. Okay.
I've actually thrown without water before, so it's possible, but you can't do one. You have to do one or the other.
Okay.
You can't throw with water and then go, without water, or throw without water and then add water and then try to go back to throwing without water. one or the other. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up. I have this kind of V shape. I need to establish that diameter in the bottom. So hands are in the same position. You can see my hands are working together. My elbows are right next to my body. You want to keep your elbows in. That way you can pull straight back and you have support. Notice I'm not up here like this. I'm not doing like the perfect posture. What I'm doing, like the posture, if you actually want to get pressure on the clay, is you kind of have to relax and pretend that you're like telling a secret to the person right across from you, okay? So I'm just going to pull straight back and curl my fingers back. Probably should have wedged this, but I didn't wedge it. A little bit off. For this size piece of clay, it's about the size of my throwing sponge, okay? Just like that. That's how I gauge. I think everybody has one of those throwing sponges. Okay, now that I've opened it up, I need to compress the floor. When I'm throwing cups, I don't ever trim them. If you pick up any of my cups, you'll notice that the foot is just cut right off. We don't know trimming. After you open it up, like all those particles are kind of standing up. The particles of clay are kind of like plates of playing cards. They're hexagonal. And when you open it, they all stand up. Okay? At least the ones on the surface, they're all standing up. And when they're all standing up, there's lots of spaces for water to be. And that water, when it dries, it shrinks. So the more water, the more spaces, the more it's going to want to shrink. So what we need to do is we need to squish them down. Okay, so I'm going to start at 3 o'clock here with my middle finger. I have my index finger in here too. I'm going to press down. I'm going to move across, back to the outside. Notice the speed that I'm doing this. The wheel's not going light speed.
So you're going from out to in.
Out to in and then in to out.
I'm going to take your finger off.
Only if it gets a little sticky, then I'll clean my finger off and then get a little bit more water. Okay, the next stage is the volcano. What I call a volcano. It's just sort of getting it ready to pull. Okay, this hand comes back on this side. I'm pulling back towards myself, and then this hand is pushing away. So everything is pushing and pulling. It's the most efficient way to do things. And what I'm going to do is I just take my hands and I'm just going to fold it in. The reason why this elbow is here is not to lean into the clay. If you lean into the clay, you're going to make it more narrow. We don't want to make it narrow. We just want to have that support so it doesn't get all wobbly and close it in. So I'm just going to take my hands. I'm just going to fold my hands in, and I have my volcano. Okay, I'm going to do heavy metal hands. I'm going to go on the inside. I'm going to pull back, and I get a little bit of a groove. If you have clean hands, oh, you got wheels.
Oh yeah, we're not taking them off now. Let's be real. I'm making it work.
Right. I was going to say, if you have clean hands and no fingernails, you can reach in there and feel the little,
You can, girl.
like the little ledge on the inside. I don't know if you want to.
Amazing. Go in there a bit, feel it.
There's like a little ledge on the inside.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, so you really went in there.
Yeah, and that little ledge on the inside is what I'm going to pull up. On the first pull, it's on the inside. On every other pulls,
Yeah.
every other pull after that, it's going to be on the outside. So this is the inside diameter is established. However wide you open it up, that's how wide it's going to be, as long as you don't keep squishing it in too much.
So what'd you do again? You put that finger and you use the outside hand, your left hand on the outside to make that groove.
So actually what
When you
happens,
closed it.
when I open it up, I have that kind of donut of clay around there, and then I make the volcano, and basically it just shifts that to the inside, and it ends up being kind of like this on the inside, and then I just reach in there with my finger and just kind of make it. So I just do the heavy metal hands,
Yeah.
and I just kind of reach in there. And also notice that whenever I do anything to clay, I'm not reaching with one hand. I have one hand on the clay, but my other
Keep it
hand
steady.
is right there to keep it steady. So I just kind of reach in there and make a little groove. Okay, now I'm going to make a pull. And I'm adding more water now than I would normally add water because I'm talking, and like I want the clay to be well lubricated so that I can work on it. And okay, here's some water here. All right, so the way that I pull, I use a knuckle pull. I don't know how Stacy taught you how to pull. Does she use a sponge or
Middle
fingers?
finger.
I use a knuckle pull because I find it to be quite efficient and it's scalable. I have a lot of pressure on the outside, and I can vary the pressure on the inside. This is good for small things, and I'll actually do this pull for my last pull. But if I want to really move clay, I'm going to use my knuckle. Okay, so everybody do hitchhiker half a fons. Okay, and then you're going to move this finger forward just slightly. Okay, so that this knuckle is in line with the middle of those fingers. Okay, this goes down right here. This is going to be pushing forward. Notice where my elbow is. It's right next to my body. This is going to pull back. I'm going to grab onto the groove on the inside, and I'm going to lift it up. My hands are going to be attached. So I either have my thumb right here, or I'm going to have it tucked into that. And it's actually lifting up. And they're going to. That's how I get them to move together, is I have them attached. So this grabs on the inside. This pushes on the outside, and then I just grab and go. Okay? I lighten my pressure just a little bit as I get to the top. I don't want to go off the top. I don't want to make it all wiggly. So I stop right there. I take my hands off. If I was making a bowl with a really big rim, I would leave a big chunk of clay there. That way when I stretched it out, I would still have enough clay for a decent rim. Okay, that's the first pull. I always compress the rim after each pull. One of the differences between a master and a student is how many times you compress the rim. Okay, so the way that I compress the rim is I keep this arm on my leg. I just let the clay go between my index finger and my thumb, and then I do the yellow cagey walkie fingers, and then I go across the clay and I just press down with this little web of clay between my fingers. You can also use a chamois, but I.
Can we do that again so I can see?
Yep. So this is here, okay? And sometimes I'll actually squeeze this just a little bit, just to create a good drinking rim shape. This just kind of goes around. You can see my hands are together. This is stabilizing.
Okay.
This is stabilizing. This is compressing. Okay, it just presses down right in that. And you can change the angle of your fingers and create a different shape depending on how your fingers are in there. Okay, so that was the first pull. It's a little thicker down at the bottom. It's a little bit thinner at the top. Typically when I'm throwing, especially when I'm throwing tall things, the top of the cylinder after the first pull will be approximately the thickness. The top third of the cylinder will be where it needs to be. And then I'm pulling all the rest of the clay into it. I don't want to try to pull through a big thick piece of clay once I've thinned out the bottom, because it'll just wobble and fall over. Okay, so now I'm going to make a groove. I'm going to do it without the sponge on this first one, so you can see how my fingers are positioned. But I always make a groove. If you don't have a groove, you can't pull any clay. Some people make a groove and go right into the pull. My preference is to make the groove, reset, re-wet, and then go. That way it ends up getting less sticky at the end. Okay, so my hands on the inside, my fingers on the inside. I press down. You can see my hands are always attached. This is pulling back, and I press down. I go up and under my finger on the inside. So I make a really exaggerated groove there. Reset, re-wet. Now, one of the ways to keep your hands in proper position for throwing is to just take a sponge. I don't use the sponge to throw. What I do is I just put my hand right there, I'm going to put my finger on it, and just kind of squish it. So it's just right there. It's not really doing anything other than keeping clay from packing into my hand. So you put a lot of pressure there, clay is going to want to go the path of least resistance, and it's just going to want to pack in your hand. So if you have a sponge there, it's not going to happen. I'm going to slow my wheel down just a little bit for this next pull. So still half a fons, okay? This goes like this. My thumb is on the bump. This is in the groove. That's on the bump right above the groove. The reason why you want your thumb here instead of here is because if you have it here, this is open. You don't have any pressure on the bump. If it's open, you don't have any pressure on the bump. What's going to happen is that bump is going to peel over, and you'll end up just ripping all that clay off instead of throwing it into the cylinder. Okay, this hand's pulling back, this hand's pushing forward. I grab onto that groove. If the groove disappears, you're not putting enough pressure on the inside. You can see I'm still talking, I'm still breathing. Okay?
That's why you're the Claybully, huh?
That's a true cylinder.
Okay, one more pull. So again, I'm going to compress the rim on the piece of clay this size. It's going to be for like a cup or something. And a good rim to drink out of is, I want to have my clay really thin down here, and then once I get up to here, I'm going to have a little bit of beef right about here, and then it's going to taper off into something that's not sharp, but not round. That's the best drinking rim. Okay, usually when I make a groove, I'm going to use a sponge so that I don't wear out my fingernail here. So I'm going to press, just make a groove up and under. Okay, so this last pull I'm going to do the fingertip pull. So I'm going to make a butterfly. Your hand's connected. I'm going to grab onto that groove. And one of the things to pay attention to when you're pulling a cylinder is you'll notice that I'm always looking at the side of the cylinder. I'm not looking down here. If I see a little bit of a wobble here, you'll start to see it almost buckle. That means you're pulling the cylinder towards yourself. So you always want to go in. So if you see it start to buckle, move towards the cylinder a little bit, and that it won't go. Also, don't be afraid. As soon as you think that cylinder is going to fall over, it will.
Okay,
You have to
stop.
you have to be brave and just keep going.
Oh, no, don't stop.
All right. Clay can smell your fear.
That's
Oh,
what's
I think I
happening.
left,
That's what's happening.
I left all my tools in. Is clean off the outside of the cylinder. Slow it down for that. Oh, first thing, get rid of this clay on the outside piece. Hold it kind of like a chopstick. So you want to hold it not way back here, but you actually want to hold it pretty close to the end. Hold the sharp edge up against the piece. Notice I'm using both hands. Hold it really tight and follow the shape of the cylinder down. Wheel. Off. You can actually clean it off using your needle tool. I kind of did. And on the outside of the clay. Well, I'm going to get rid of the throw rings here. So I'm going to hold on to this rib. I don't know if you guys probably don't have this particular
We
shape.
do.
If you have this one with a rounded end, which is rounded.
Oh, we don't know.
Oh, no.
I don't think so.
You're right, it's a different shape.
Okay. If there's one rib that you should get for
That one?
throwing, is this one. It's just the standard
Okay.
kidney rib from Kemper. It's the most used rib in my bucket. So, and it's mostly because of this particular curve that it has. There are a lot of ribs out there. I mean, like this rib is a fine rib, but I mean, if you look at the difference,
Yeah.
there's just a little bit more variation in curve with this Kemper
She wants the
rib.
more rounder one.
Yeah. Okay, so hold on my hand with my fingers just behind it, thumb in the hole, and then this is a pretty standard rib. It comes with a point. I just cut the point off. That way I can get all the way down to the wheel. Okay, this is pulling back. This is kind of just supporting. This is pretty thin, so I gotta be careful. You want it one. They should be right across from each other. Again, if you're afraid, if you see it kind of like wobbling and you get scared, it's gonna collapse. Go from the bottom to the top, and then the top back down to the bottom. Notice most things I'm doing with the clay, I'm moving about 1/4 of an inch each time the wheel goes around. That's really important. If you go more than that, you're going to get wiggles and wobbles. If you go less than that, it's going to get sticky, especially when you're making your pulls. So each time the wheel goes around, you need to lift your hand up about 1/4 of an inch.
And how many pounds of clay? You said about 1.25 pounds?
This is about 1.25 pounds.
Oh, it's tall.
Okay, so, and if this was a cup, what I could do is, because I cleaned all the stuff off the outside, I could just clean my hands off. And you can see I don't have any slip. Make sure there are little bits of clay on there. Kind of put my elbows in, put my hands together, like All-State hands. Just give it a little wiggle and set it aside. But, since this is a demo,
No,
It's
no,
like
no,
artwork.
Okay, so what you're looking for, got a little bit of extra clay down at the bottom, but it's not too bad. Even across the floor, fairly even walls. That's what you're looking for.
Unbelievable.
Right?
It's art.
Good job.
No doubt.
Easy, right?
Piece of cake.
Yeah.